Well, happy Easter to each and every one of you on this glorious morning. And I want to start my message this morning by sharing a video that actually we have seen once before here in this sanctuary, but it's such a perfect Easter video that I had to share it once again. Plus, it's too good to only see once. So with that, I want to share this video with you.
Lola?
Yeah.
Okay, one day we went to the zoo. You just got to say went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
No, you don't say we went, just say to the zoo.
To the zoo.
One day we went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
No, you don't say we went, you just say to the zoo. Okay.
To the zoo.
Perfect. Okay, one day we went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
No, you don't say we went, darling. Okay, start again. Just say to the zoo.
To the zoo.
One day we went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
No, you said we went, love. You just...
Okay.
Okay, gonna do it right this time? No, you don't say we went, you just say to the zoo.
Okay.
Okay, we gotta keep Rocco entertained, okay? This is his song. One day we went to the zoo. No, you don't say we.
We went to the zoo.
No, but you just say to the zoo.
Okay.
Say
to
it.
the zoo. To the zoo. To the zoo. To the zoo.
Okay, ready? One day we went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
No, you said we went, love.
We went to the zoo.
I know, you just did it wrong again. Ready? Last time. One day we went to the zoo.
We went to the zoo.
Oh, Lola. Oh, my goodness. She tries so hard, doesn't she? She is fully intentional and she is not intending to make a mistake each time, but yet she can't help herself. And I love it. I love it because she just fails over and over and over and over again, but never reduces her energy. Always fully involved. And I also love listening to her parent. You hear him at one point struggling, keeping his energy level up as he's just like, okay, one more time. But each and every time she is forgiven by her parent for the mistake that she just made. And she tries again, and she tries again, and she tries again. That is the Easter story. It's a beautiful reflection of the Easter story because the Easter story at its core, what it teaches us and what it avails to us is forgiveness. That we might make mistakes. We might fall short. We might fail. And yet, each time we are granted that forgiveness and we are allowed to try again and try again and try again. It's a beautiful story, and this is a beautiful day to remind us of that story. And no one at the time of Jesus embodies the idea of the need for forgiveness than the person who introduced a critical aspect of this insight to us, and that was the Apostle Peter. Y'all have heard me talk about Peter before. I love Peter. Peter is just a wonderful disciple. He's so bold. He's so courageous. He says what's on his mind as well as on the minds of others. And yet he also stumbles and therefore is so relatable. And so Peter is just a wonderful person within the 12 disciples because he is so good at giving Jesus, providing Jesus with teachable moments. Part of Peter's role was to be that person for Jesus because Jesus at his core was a teacher. As a rabbi, he was a teacher of the word, a teacher of the direction, a teacher of the way. And Peter gave him so many great opportunities to teach. And Peter, once again, in the book of Matthew, was unfiltered, said what he was thinking, trying to represent others, trying to establish himself with Jesus and see what I've learned and what I know. And that unfiltered response or that unfiltered message coming out of Peter led to these teachable moments for Jesus. And we see that as it relates to forgiveness in the book of Matthew 18, verses 21 and 22. Peter, out of nowhere, gives Jesus a great moment. And when he says, Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? And then he thinks he's being very gracious and very generous with this next line. So he's actually putting himself in a really kind of a expand his chest moment. Up to 7 times? So generous. I will forgive my brothers and my sisters who sin against me up to 7 times. And Jesus answers and tells him, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Now, you think about being generous with the number 7, how deflated you would feel when you actually realize the answer isn't 7, it's 490. You weren't in the ballpark, right? Oh, what does that mean? But here is that teachable moment. Now, I counted on the video. Y'all probably counted along with me in your head. I'm sure you did. But I counted, and Lola fell short. She failed 11 times. 11 times. Now, the good news is that we didn't see her succeed. So she might have gone 490 times before it was all said and done and was forgiven each and every time. But she failed 11 times. But that also means that she still has a whole bunch still available to her. Now, there's a story on the road by Steve Hartman in which he told the story of a woman named Mary Johnson, whose son was murdered. And the murderer was given 25-year sentence. He was a 16-year-old boy, but is tried as adult and was given a 25-year sentence. And she could not get over her son's death. And so she went and visited him in prison. And they established a friendship. And when he came out of prison, he needed a place to live. And she went to her landlord and said, there's an empty apartment immediately beside mine. And that's where he lives now, because she forgave him. He murdered her son, and yet she forgave him. And she has a beautiful explanation. She said, lack of forgiveness is like a cancer, and it eats you up inside. I needed to forgive him for my healing. I needed to forgive him and share the Easter story with him for my sake. I've always struggled with this verse in Matthew about 70 times 7. And I thought, my goodness, of course, you lose count after a while, right? I think that's the point. But I always struggled with that verse because I thought, how do you keep going back and giving forgiveness over and over again? And then I had an experience in my life when I gained new insight that applied to me. This was years ago, but I had been devastatingly hurt by somebody. And in my mind, I had been absolutely wronged by this person. And I could not get over it. I could not shake it. I could not shed it. And I realized that forgiveness was necessary because I had a cancer inside of me. And so I remember one night offering probably the most sincere prayer I may have ever offered, in which I forgave this other person. And I felt so relieved, and a weight had been lifted off of me. And I felt good about what I had just done, how it made me feel, and also that now I could move forward. In that moment, that's how I felt. 2 days later, the hurt was back again. And I still had this resentment for that person for hurting me. And I had to offer that prayer again in full sincerity. And a few days later, that hurt was back again. That anger was back again. That frustration was back again. And I had to offer that prayer over and over. I don't know that I got to 490. But each time I offered that prayer, the weight was a little bit less. And the distance between them seemed like it was a little bit more. And eventually, I fully forgave the person. Why do I talk about Peter today on Easter Sunday? I talk about Peter because Peter was one who gave many opportunities for forgiveness. He gave teachable moments and he gave forgiving moments because Peter had a pattern of making mistakes and then being forgiven, and then making mistakes and being forgiven, and making mistakes and being forgiven, just like Lola. Falling short and failing over and over again, but doing it with full energy and full conviction. And I want to share with you just a few of them. I don't want to drag Peter through the mud completely, but there are a few examples that I can share with you. So Matthew, once again, chapter 16, verses 21 and 20 through 23. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many of the things at the hands of the elders and chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside. Jesus, come over here for a minute. And he began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, this shall never happen to you. And then Jesus says something to Peter that hit me hard between the eyes. Get behind me, Satan. Oh, wow. You are a stumbling block for me. You do not have the mind. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. He needed forgiveness because he was trying to lead Jesus astray from the path that Jesus knew he needed to be on. Also in Matthew 26, 50 through 54, and we know this story too. Then the men stepped forward and seized Jesus and arrested him. And with that, one of Jesus's companions, Peter, reached for a sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do not think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels. But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? Peter, once again, jumping out there, full energy, and Jesus saying, no, you're in the wrong. You're making a mistake. You're failing. Let me teach you some more. And let me use your example to teach others some more. And so Peter had this pattern of mistake, forgiveness, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And then we come to the Easter weekend. And Peter provides to us probably his deepest moment of need for forgiveness. And we can relate to him because we have had our deep moments of need we can relate to the need for deep forgiveness. This takes place while Jesus is being tried by the high priests. And so all who are associated with Jesus now are also in danger as a result. And I want to read to you from Matthew chapter 26, verses 69 through 75. Peter's darkest moment. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. And he denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. And after a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely You are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. And immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. He went outside and he wept bitterly. Peter's darkest hour. Jesus had told him that he would deny him 3 times, and he said, I would never do that. I would never do that to you. And he was given a sign that the rooster would crow, that he would deny him 3 times before that. By the way, the rooster was a trumpet playing when the temple work was going to begin that morning. Each morning, when the work at the temple would begin, a trumpet would play. And so you would hear this. There'd be no denying that it happened. Peter said, I will never deny you 3 times. And then he did. And as soon as the 3rd one happened, it became so obvious to him what he had done. He went outside and he wept bitterly. And I think in that moment, if Peter could have, he would have shed his skin in order to escape what he was feeling. But shortly thereafter, the true message of Easter is delivered. And it comes from Luke chapter 23, and it's a very short, single verse. But it's one of the most powerful ones there is. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus is on the cross. He is dying. He is in immense pain. He is being wronged publicly. And he looks out over the masses of people and he says, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We don't know that Peter was in that crowd, probably wasn't. We know that we weren't in that crowd. But yet, Jesus spoke to Peter in that moment. He speaks to us through that moment. This is the story of Easter. Jesus died on the cross and he rose on Easter for us, for our sins. Forgiveness is the story of Easter. And the story goes on to show this for Peter. Peter failed. He had denied Christ, yet he felt the power of forgiveness, the way that only forgiveness can be granted. He felt that power from his heavenly parent, from Jesus on the cross, from his heavenly parent, but he also felt that power of forgiveness from himself. And he picked himself up and he rose again. And this is the beautiful scripture from Easter Sunday morning, John chapter 20, verses 3-8. Mary Magdalene has come back from the tomb and said it is empty, and Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. And here is Peter. Peter in all of Peter. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as a cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. Do you hear the beautiful story of forgiveness within that? Peter could have just simply left the whole situation, said, I'm done with this. I'm not worthy. I cannot continue. I'm embarrassed. I'm shamed. Instead, he feels the story of Easter through forgiveness, and he re-engages. And because of that, he's able to rise back up. He's able to become a leader again amongst the disciples. He can run to the tomb and not hesitate, but sprint right inside. And from all of his mistakes, Peter is able to discover who he is and who he can become. And thank goodness for forgiveness, because Peter went on to offer a beautiful ministry that carried the church forward that we all sit amongst. Forgiveness is about allowing it to take place, allowing us to discover who we are, and from there, through that forgiveness, rising up to who we can become. Let's be clear about something, though. We celebrate Easter this morning, but Easter was one event 2,000 years ago. Jesus died once, and he rose from the grave once. But through forgiveness, we can rise above and relive the Easter story daily. That is what keeps the Easter story going forward. It's on us to carry that story and keep it alive and make it real. Through forgiveness, we can rise up by accepting forgiveness from our heavenly parent and accepting forgiveness from others, by granting forgiveness to others, but also granting forgiveness to ourselves. We bring this Easter story back to life. I will say this, in my humble opinion, we have come a long way in 2,000 years. Jesus talked about the golden rule, doing unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. Anytime we exercise the golden rule, we draw the circle wider and we include more and more people inside the circle. And the us versus them becomes more us and less them. That's the goal of the golden rule. Draw the circle wider. Bring more and more people and more needs and more hurts into that circle and offer that ministry. And I think we have done that. I've seen that within my lifetime. I've heard the stories generations before me, and that's only covering about 100 years. 2,000 years have transpired. And we have learned from Jesus' example of forgiveness, and we have done a good job, and we have come a long way. However, from the cross, Jesus continues to teach us. And he teaches us through his words, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he teaches us through those words to us, forgive them, for they know not what they do. As Christ teaches us, through forgiveness, we can raise ourselves above our circumstances. We, just like Jesus on Easter Sunday, can rise up. We can rise above our pettiness. We can rise above our devastations. We can rise above our hurts. We can rise above our slights. We can rise above our judgments. We can rise above our prejudgments. Make no mistake. We have prejudices. We can rise above those. We can rise above our own failures. We can rise above those things that stand between where we are and who we are called to be. We can rise above those things that keep us from truly feeling fullest extent of God's love for us. And so on Easter, we say, he is risen.
He is risen.
And through forgiveness, we are risen. I would like to conclude this morning by sharing with you a beautiful song in which you feel Peter's pain as he denies Christ 3 times. And I want you to feel his pain. But I also want you to feel his forgiveness that is granted to him and that he grants to himself. But I want you to take it a step further. As you hear this song and the words soak in, I want to experience those times in your life in which you have failed, in which you have fallen short, in which you have repeated over and over the same mistake 11 times, 490 times. Those times in your life in which you have experienced pain from others or because of your own failures. And I want you to feel the forgiveness that is in this song as well. Because it teaches us, just like Jesus did on Easter morning, to rise up and to try again.
Seen the signs and wonders, walked 1,000 steps by the Master's side. He had pledged to never leave him, even if it meant giving up his life. Yet here he was, he was needing most, and he had left the Savior so terribly alone. How could things ever be the same? How could he lift his face again? And Peter he'd failed. Peter failed to pass the test, left the one who loved him most. But Peter said, "Oh, I'm ashamed of my sin. Get up and try again." You may not have seen it coming, but the tempter knew the weakness of your soul. And now your heart's consumed with sorrow, and you're wondering how you ever stood that low. Now here you are, with a choice to be made. Will you stay here drowning in the pain of your mistake? Or will you choose to start again with a chapter called Redemption? And you may weep, you may weep because you failed. You have failed to pass the test, left the one who loved you most. But you can say, though I'm ashamed of my sin, Let's get up and try again.